Welcome back to the Travelneers. In this video, we'll be going over some tips that we found to be helpful in our recent trip to Hawaii. If you'd like to see the vlogs from our trip, check out our Hawaii vlog playlist. We stayed there for 2 full weeks and learned a lot about the culture and activities that Hawaii had to offer. Thankfully, we did a ton of research, but it still wasn't enough. We started our Hawaii trip by flying into Kona, Big Island. Flying into Honolulu's airport can be expensive. A perfect way to combat this is to consider flying to other islands. If you do the research, you might notice that it is cheaper to go to other islands most of the time. This can sometimes save you up to hundreds of dollars. Inter-island flights are cheap, and the longest flight takes around an hour. This also gives you a great excuse to visit the other Hawaiian islands. Which brings us to our next point. If you're planning to island hop, plan to spend a few days or even a week to see each island. If you plan a big Hawaii trip, chances are you won't be able to visit each island in a very short time span unless you miss everything these islands have to offer. The Hawaiian Islands have a lot of diverse weather and even biomes. The 2 islands we visited were Big Island and Oahu. Big Island has 2 active volcanoes in the Volcanoes National Park and offers the only place in the world where you can scuba dive with manta rays. Oahu is the home of famous Waikiki Beach and Honolulu, Hawaii's state capital. That being said, don't ignore the rest of Oahu just to stay in Honolulu and Waikiki. There are tons of activities in the North Shore, like skydiving, snorkeling, and hiking. More on that later. Traveling with family? Dole Plantation will be a fun theme park-like visit. Movie nerd? Visit Kualoa Ranch, the shooting location for many movies, most notably Jurassic Park. If you head to the west, you can visit beautiful Lanikai Beach. White sands, clear blue water. What else can you really ask for? And then, there's one of Oahu's most favorite tourist spots, Hanauma Bay. This tourist-packed area is a must-see for any marine biology lovers. The bay is full of Hawaiian wildlife. We were able to see parrotfish and the Humu Humu Nuku Nuku Uapua'a, Hawaii's state fish. When going snorkeling or scuba diving, one thing that is very important is to wear sunscreen. But don't go buying any sunscreen for your Hawaii trip. Hawaii has a strict rule on what kind of sunscreens are acceptable. Reef-Safe Sunscreen is a must at snorkeling and scuba diving sites. When visiting Hawaii, you'll realize that the state really does value its nature and wildlife. This, of course, includes the reefs that surround the state. Most sunscreen have an ingredient that harms the local coral reefs. Not to worry, however, most areas that require Reef-Safe Sunscreen provide areas to buy them as well. When going to Hawaii, pick your beaches wisely. Hawaii, being made up of islands, obviously has a lot of beaches. Some, unfortunately, are not the best for swimming. Before hitting the beach, make sure that you research the beach that you are heading to. There are some that are very dangerous with strong currents. Some of these currents can be really close to the shore, so it's advised to either stay really close or visit another place altogether. Then, there are some beaches that are just very rocky. We visited Carl Smith Beach, known to have sea turtle sightings. Stepping in the water, however, quickly turned scary when we realized how many sharp rocks were underwater. Jason even cut his foot on one. There were entire sections where it was impossible to rest after swimming because of the rocks below. While a nice picnic spot, Carl Smith Beach is one example where we would say was horrible for water activities. So, we talked a lot about the water, which makes sense. When most people think about Hawaii, they think about the ocean and other water activities. But it might come as a shock for some. Hawaii is not just for the beach. Every island has tons of hiking points that were absolutely breathtaking. Since the Hawaiian Islands were formed by volcanoes, the centers of the islands are very high in altitude. Being isolated in the middle of the ocean also means that Hawaii has some of the best sunset and sunrise views. Each island has its own popular sunset and sunrise viewpoints. Pololu Point in Big Island and Makapu'u Lighthouse Trail in Oahu are just some examples. All of this beauty, however, did not go unnoticed. A big portion of Hawaii's economy comes from tourism, which means that the islands can be packed no matter what time of year it is. Hawaii is regularly ranked high on the list for dream honeymoons and vacations. The best times to visit Hawaii is March to May and September to mid-December to avoid the standard summer holiday and let's visit somewhere warm winters. Hawaii is warm year-round, so going at a different time than summer would be a very cost-effective move. While a very touristy area, take the time to really learn about and respect the local Hawaiian culture. While it might be a US state, the native culture there is unlike anything you'll see in the rest of the country. Hawaii joined the United States as its 50th state in 1959. Before that, Hawaii was its own kingdom with its own language and culture. One place to visit to learn about the culture is Ailani Palace, the official residence of the last ruling monarchs of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Take the time to visit a luau, a Polynesian and ancient Hawaiian ritual meant to be a popular social gathering of celebration. Luau's are not just dance performances, but provide a story and are seen as a way to connect with nature. While you're in Hawaii, try the local cuisine. We found that Hawaiian restaurants were generous with portions. We had to split a lot of dishes to finish everything. Hawaiian cuisine is very heavily influenced by many different styles. Ancient Hawaii had Polynesian voyagers who brought different vegetables like taro and yams. Europeans and Americans brought in large sugarcane and coffee plantations. These plantations then brought in immigrants from neighboring Asian countries, namely Korea, Japan, the Philippines, and China, bringing their cuisine with them. This blend of cuisines from different cultures all come together to make the unique cuisine of Hawaii. Oh, and do yourself a favor and try the poke in Hawaii. It doesn't matter if you've had it before. Hawaiian poke is just on another level. The last tip to be conscious about while planning a trip to Hawaii is to not underestimate the time difference. This is definitely a warning for the visitors from North and South Americas. American tourists that go to Hawaii might have the misconception that traveling to Hawaii shouldn't be too hard, since they're technically from the same country. One thing to note, however, is especially for the visitors from the EST time zone like us, the time difference is a whopping 6 hours. Hawaii is considered to be the most remote archipelago in the world. It's a little less than 2,500 miles from the continental US, while Japan sits even further. It's so isolated that Hawaii has its own time zone. If you're from North or South America, don't get too excited to try a luau first. Luau's are usually performed in the evening and end late. You wouldn't be able to enjoy it after a long flight. Instead, we recommend visiting a luau near the end of your trip as a great way to end the vacation. Those were 10 tips for visiting Hawaii. Let us know if there's anything we missed in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching!